Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Michelle Carter here from the Aram Public Library in Delavan, Wisconsin. And it's time for our weekly get together with the UW Extension Walworth County Master Gardeners. Today, we're meeting with Julie and we'll be talking about bulbs and perennials. Just perfect for this lovely Labor Day weekend we have coming up. Take it away, Julie.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. Happy Labor Day weekend. Happy fall. I know it kind of feels like things are turning and changing. So if you don't have big weekend plans this weekend where you're going out of town, spend some time in your garden. It's going to be beautiful until Sunday when I know there's some rain predicted. So we have today and tomorrow to kind of rejuvenate our gardens and do some other tasks. I know my garden's looking a little like it needs some attention. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get right to it. I have lots of information to share with you today. So first of all, I want to thank Aram Library for hosting us every week. We've been here every Friday throughout the growing season, and we will keep going through September. And all of these videos are on Aram Library's Facebook page. So you can go to the videos tab on their Facebook page and see all of our past videos, which is really cool. We have been giving lots of information on all sorts of different gardening topics, tons of different things about pests and what to grow and what to do, and all sorts of different advice. So go to their page, look up our past videos, and lots of resources posted in the comments for each of those videos too. So you have access to all that information. So again, my name is Julie Hill. I am a staff member with University of Wisconsin Division of Extension. I'm so happy to be here with you every Friday. It is my job as a horticulture outreach specialist for Walworth and Rock counties is to really help you become better gardeners. At the end of the day, that's what I want to do. I want to help answer your gardening questions. I want to connect you with our university resources, and I want you to know that we are giving you reliable and credible information. The Master Gardeners that join us every week are a big part of that. They are volunteers, but they also go through a certification process to become volunteers. So they go through training, they have extensive horticulture knowledge, they have extensive gardening experience, and they maintain volunteer hours every year and continuing education. So the really great thing about gardening and working in horticulture is that there's always new things to learn. I am learning every day and I love that. And it's great to be outside and working with plants and working in soil, and it's very therapeutic too. So today I have a 2-for-1 deal for you today. Thinking about fall and thinking about some things you should be if you're wanting to do in your garden, or some things that might need attention. We're going to talk a top 5 tips for dividing perennials and a top 5 for planting bulbs. So normally through these programs, we do top 5 tips for you. You know, these 5 things that you can do or that you should know. So again, I will also post resources and links to additional information in the comments section. So let's start with dividing perennials. First of all, why would we even want to divide them? Let's just let them keep growing, right? Well, sometimes the plant needs to be a little rejuvenated and to stimulate some new growth. When our plants get really overcrowded, that helps lead to disease, and they're competing for nutrients and water. So when they're crowded, there's not much airflow getting through, and that's when you have like fungal problems, and you can have bacterial problems because there's no air. They need a little bit more space. So if we can open that up a little bit, there's less competition for nutrients, less water, they're going to be healthier, less chance for disease. Sometimes plants just get a little bit out of control. I know that I have some that are great, but they have kind of overtaken their garden space, and they're kind of spreading in areas that I don't really want them to, whether they're spreading on their own or, you know, birds are eating the seeds and they're popping up in other places. So sometimes we just need to kind of keep that under control. And so this is a great way to kind of divide them out and put them either in a new space, give them to a friend. There's lots of ways that you don't have to necessarily kill the plants that you're dividing out. You can go plant them somewhere else and keep that. You might also do it to increase the number of plants. So maybe you started off with just a couple of plants and now they are really kind of spreading. Or you wanted to, you know, take one section and put it in another area and let that spread. So you're increasing your plants, which is great. So what to divide when? So we really want to talk about dividing that plant when it's not flowering. Okay, so if you have plants that are flowering right now, we want to wait till they're not flowering. But if you have some that have already passed their bloom time, then you can work on those. When they're flowering, they're focusing their energy. Plants have hormones and energy and all that, just like us. So they're focusing the energy on the flower. When they're not flowering, they can then focus on building the root and leaf tissue, and that's what we want. So this fall, what we're really talking about is dividing spring and summer blooming perennials. So that's, you know, think about those things that bloomed earlier in the season. You can divide those things now. Peonies are great to divide in the fall. Oriental poppies, irises, those are great to divide in the fall too, and spread them around. Another note here about what to divide when is not to wait. In this picture, you'll see it's kind of empty in the middle, like these plants have grown up, but they've left kind of this donut shape. And you want to divide when the plants look good, not when they've kind of have passed that point. So definitely if you have plants that are looking like this, you can divide them, but trying just to be proactive about when you're dividing those plants. So it's a good time right about now to be dividing your plants, especially with rain coming on Sunday. We want to kind of time it about 4 to 6 weeks before the ground freezes, and that helps the plant roots become established before it gets really cold. If it's a cloudy or overcast day, that's better. Those hot sunny days are not great for dividing because you don't want your plants to dry out, because when you're dividing a plant, you're actually digging it out of the ground or digging a portion of it out. So you definitely want to pick a cooler day, or try to keep, if it is a warmer day, keep the plants in shade, keep them moist. I am going to share this really great resource from the University of Minnesota. It actually is a list of over 100 perennials, I think about 120 or so perennials, and it tells you when to divide them. So if it's spring or fall or either. Some are better to be done in the spring, some can be done in either, some are best to be done right now. So I'm going to share that in the comments so you can check that out. So if it is really dry in the spot that you're going to be working in, water the soil just to help, you know, work up the plant and give it that extra moisture. And again, if you can plan it to be dividing plants sort of now, because we have that rain coming, that's great. Or maybe, you know, next weekend, see how it goes. But if there's a couple days of showers forecasted, again, just giving moisture. If there is no rain forecasted, doesn't mean you can't divide. Just keep that in mind that you might want to give them extra moisture through your hose. All right, so real quick, how do you even divide up a plant? So first, you're just going to dig it up. You can use a nice shovel, a fork. You're going to dig up whatever you're trying to divide out. You're going to lift that plant out of the ground and just remove kind of that loose dirt that's stuck to the roots. And then you're just going to separate the plant into smaller divisions. You can tease it apart. It kind of depends on what the plant is. You might have to really dig your shovel in and kind of break it apart. You might want to cut it with a sharp knife, or I have kind of a spade that has a really sharp edge to it. If you have those big garden forks, you can kind of put those in the middle and then pull it apart. So you're just taking it apart, and you want to have about 3 to 5 real healthy, vigorous shoots kind of in each of your sections. So because you have those really healthy roots to get them started again in their new location. And again, like we talked about, keep them shaded and moist until you're replanting them. So really pretty easy. Let's not overthink it, right? Like if you have some plants that need some dividing, just go for it. So let's talk about bulbs next. First of all, just what are we talking about here? Well, a bulb is just this really general term to refer to those plants that have underground fleshy storage structures. So think of like really good examples are our classic tulips, daffodils, those types of things. There's a lot of plants that we think of our bulbs, but there aren't true bulbs, but we kind of treat them the same way. That bulb is just where everything is stored for the plant. So bulbs are perennials for the most part, and they have a kind of a period of growth and flowering, and then they go dormant, and then they die back. And then, so those spring bulbs, their end of the growing season is late spring. So think of daffodils, right? They're kind of one of those first things to bloom, and then they die back. And then they kind of start growing again underground so that they can flower earlier in the season. So whenever we're talking about planting, we're talking about right plant, right place. And this would go for if you're moving some perennials around too. You want to think about what the needs of the plant are, and you want to think about your soil. Good soil is probably one of the most important things you can do. So I know that I have pretty high clay content in my soil. I mean, it used to be just solid clay. And over the years with working in it and adding compost and things, it's become better. But if you have a new area that you're working in, that you may need to add some things to get the soil ready. And adding compost or peat moss or some other organic material will also help the drainage. So we really want the water to be able to filter through the soil and not get stuck, especially with bulbs, because if you plant them and then they stay kind of waterlogged, they're going to rot and then they're not going to grow. So work in that organic material to the top 12 inches of your soil and even a little bit deeper if you can. So you want to select high quality bulbs. So right now, if you're out looking for bulbs, the flower bud has already developed before the bulb is offered for sale. So they're going to be out there now for sale. Size is important. Look for those plump, firm bulbs. You don't want the bottom where the roots are coming out to look real dry or anything like that. You want to make sure it's intact and a nice plump and firm. One more thing about your bulbs, when you do plant them, you're going to just plant them tip up. So you're going to set them right in. We're going to talk about planting depth in a second. So when you do plant, you can fertilize at planting. You can buy some commercial fertilizers that are rated for bulbs. That's fine. You can use bone meal. You can use superphosphate. The most important thing is you want phosphorus. And I circled in red that number in the middle. So whenever you look at a fertilizer package, there's 3 numbers on it. And it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So that first number is your nitrogen number. That middle number is your potassium or your phosphorus, excuse me. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at phosphorus or phosphate, and that is good for root development. That's what the bulbs are going to need. We really want them to develop their roots right now and in the fall as you plant them, and then they'll grow and flower in the spring. So mix in whatever you're using into the soil below where you're going to be planting them, and so that the roots can get that out of the soil. You can just kind of mix that in the bottom of your planting bed or a little bit below the hole that you dig. And again, you can buy commercial fertilizers for bulbs. That's fine. So when you're planting those spring bulbs, the general rule is planting 2 to 3 times as deep as the bulb is tall. So large bulbs like tulips, they have a pretty large bulb. You're going to plant those pretty deep at about 8 inches deep. There might be other bulbs that you buy that are smaller, and you'll plant those again 2 to 3 times as deep as the bulb is tall and measuring from the bottom of the bulb. So this goes for spring bulbs. Again, tulips, daffodils, those types of things that bloom in the spring. Those bulbs that bloom later in the summer, check the label. They'll tell you the instructions of when or how deep to plant them. You got to look at that information. And then water the bulbs following planting. Again, this will help settle the soil. That's why we've talked about soil a lot, is having really good drainage so that the water doesn't just stay in there. If I just planted bulbs in my heavy clay soil, it would get really waterlogged and then the bulbs are going to rot. So we don't want to overwater either, but we definitely want to give them a drink after planting. And those fall planted bulbs, so when we're planting bulbs now, they have to root before it gets too cold. Now, I've also been asked, what about planting bulbs? And sometimes you have some maybe little critters that live in your yard that like to eat those bulbs. I mean, that's good food for them too, like squirrels or probably even bunnies. So what are the options there? Well, I've heard of a few things. One is you could put down some like hardware cloth, like chicken wire, and you can kind of smush that right into the soil over where you planted, and they're not going to want to dig through that. So that's one option, is to kind of bury a little bit of like that hardware cloth or the big chicken wire so there's still holes for the plants to grow through. Another thing you can try to do, I've heard of the very mechanical thing, not using chemicals or anything, is just putting some plastic forks in around where you planted, just to deter the critters from digging. They're not going to want to dig around things. So again, just a deterrence, especially after you plant. As things grow, you can, take those measures out of there. So like I said, I'm going to post lots of resources in the comments as always. Feel free to take a look at those. If you have a question, any gardening question at all, feel free to contact me directly. I'll drop my email in the comments too. And I'd love to hear your feedback. So let me know either via email or I'll post a link to a survey too. Thanks, Michelle.
And thank you, Julie. Julie and I were just talking earlier today, this weekend. We're getting out the muscles, people, and we're going to work on my perennial beds. They've been sadly neglected. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you have happy gardening experiences this weekend, at least taking a moment just to enjoy what you've cultivated and worked on this summer or what you're dreaming about for next year.
Perfect.
So thank you, Julie. Thank you to the Master Gardeners, and everyone have a safe, healthy, and happy weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.